Hello there. Welcome into a Tuesday edition of the show. I am so glad to have you, whether you're listening on your radio, streaming the show online at extrasports1300.com, or you're listening through the new and improved Extra Sports 1300 app, sponsored by Diversus Health, Mental Health, and well-being for all. A veritable cornucopia of sports topics coming away over the course of the next 3 hours, and I'd love to get your input on all of them. The phone line and the text line are the same number. Isn't technology wonderful? It's for your convenience, 719-247-1313. It would be a good idea to know that number as well if you'd like to win something today. Like, I don't know, passes to Colorado State Fair, a couple carnival passes thrown in as well. Be doing that today, so be listening out for that, and that number will prove to come in handy for that. He's too young looking to be the get off my lawn guy. But if you listen to Tom Brady speak these days, he's the get off my lawn guy. That's who he's becoming. He's finding his voice as a media personality and using it to speak on a lot of different subjects. And I like that he's doing this. There's another GOAT that really didn't do that. Right? Very quiet. That's why the Last Dance documentary was so massive, because we heard more from Michael Jordan in a 5-part docuseries than we had in every year since he retired up until that point. So I don't begrudge Tom Brady for speaking on things, and I look forward to when he does say something, because I want to hear what he has to say. When you are the greatest to do what you have done, people want to hear what you have to say. But I keep listening to things that Tom Brady says, and I'm like, man, he's grumpy. And it's very back in my day, get off my lawn type of stuff. Here's what he said about the state of quarterbacking. This was from that Fanatics Fan Fest thing that they're having. He's talking to Stephen A. Smith. Take a listen.
There used to be college programs. Now there are college teams. You're no longer learning a program, you're learning a playbook. And the program is ultimately, like at Michigan, for me, that was a pro-style program. 5 years, I got to learn how to drop back pass, to read defenses, to read coverages, to be coached. I had to learn from being 7th quarterback on the depth chart to moving up to 3rd to ultimately being a starter. I had to learn all those things in college. That was development. Then I went to New England, and I was developed by Coach Belichick and the offensive staff there. I didn't start my first year. I think it's just a tragedy that we're forcing these rookies to play early. But the reality is the only reason why they are is because we dumbed the game down, which has allowed them to play. It used to be thought of at a higher level. We used to spend hours and hours in the offseason and training camp trying to be a little bit better than next year. But I think what happens is discourages the coaches from going to deep levels, because they realize the players don't have the opportunity to go to a deep level, so they're just going to teach them where they're at.
And there's a lot of truth to what Tom Brady is saying. I'm not dismissing everything out of hand. I think he's more speaking to what is going on in college football. And it's something that's only going to get worse. Right? Because the name of the game is go to where you get paid, go to where you will play, improve your draft stock. And if you're not going to play, then you go somewhere else. And that's what he's talking about at the first part of it. It was back in his day. Unheard of to transfer. Not unheard of, but you didn't really do it unless the situation you were in was you just saw no way, no path to being a starting quarterback. But if you were in Brady's situation and you had more talented quarterbacks above you, you would still stick it out for hopes that you would become the starting quarterback eventually. So I get what he's saying. And with NIL in the transfer portal, it's only going to get worse. So that part of it, I do agree. That the workforce that has come out of college football may not be as good as it was before. The caliber of athlete might be better. There are certainly some generational talents. But I could get on board with what he's saying. And I think even if maybe he's a little bit off now, he's going to become more right as time goes on. But the second part of it, I don't know that I'm in total agreement with him on. The part where he says, and obviously this hits locally because we expect sooner rather than later, or no, probably later rather than sooner, Sean Payne to name Bo Nix as starter for week 1. Jaden Daniels has already been named the starter in Washington, and there was no doubt that Caleb Williams was drafted to be the starter. It wasn't even a conversation in Chicago. He got 1 year to his point. Okay, are we talking about a world of difference between starting your rookie season and starting in your second year? Does it make that much of a difference? Does it make a difference? Sure. To the point that it's a travesty, it's a tragedy, it's ridiculous. I don't think so. There have been studies done that say that quarterbacks that start their second year are generally more successful than ones that start their rookie year. But what is the reason for that? Because I believe that one of the biggest factors, whether you are a first-year quarterback, a second-year quarterback, is where you are. A lot of the rookies that play because they're on bad teams. Tom Brady wasn't on a bad team. He's on a good team. Patrick Mahomes wasn't on a bad team. He was on a good team. The Green Bay Packers, everybody points to them and what they're able to do. They've been a good team for a very long time. So they can afford to have patience. Some teams are desperate for a quarterback and they're not good. And so Broncos have one of these guys on their roster, right? Zach Wilson. Zach Wilson goes to a terrible Jets team, is forced to play right away because they have no better options. Maybe a little bit of it is because of pressure in the fan base and everything like that. But he struggles. He flames out. And he's never going to reach whatever potential he may have had coming out of BYU. So I think that is a better indicator of whether a quarterback is going to be good or not is where they end up. I don't know that it's necessarily waiting till year 2, or in Green Bay's case, waiting till year 3, 4. And I'll equate it to this year's quarterback class. Do you think Bo Nix is ready to start week 1? Of course. The guy started 61 games in college. Okay? He is not the type of quarterback that Tom Brady may be referring to. I would submit that even Jaden Daniels and Caleb Williams, who did not play for as long as Bo Nix did, still have enough starts under their belt to be ready to go. And I think, not for nothing, all three are in pretty decent positions. There's still a lot of work to be done when it comes to Chicago, Washington, and Denver. But you can see that whether it's coaching, whether it's, you know, the supporting cast, that they're in a little bit better position than a Zach Wilson was going to New York, or, you know, a Baker Mayfield going to Cleveland, or a Josh Rosen going to Arizona, a Ryan Leaf going to San Diego. I think there are rookie quarterbacks that are ready. I think there's plenty of them. There are some that aren't. And those are the big swings you see taken by a desperate team in the top 5 that misses out on maybe the number 1 can't miss quarterback, but they still really need a quarterback. So they take a big swing on a guy who doesn't have. The closest thing I would compare it to in this class would be Drake May. Right? New England needs a savior, but they did not have a chance to get Caleb Williams or even Jaden Daniels. That's the one you look at and say, could this turn out to kind of add to Tom Brady's argument? But they're probably not starting him. So they're kind of doing what Tom Brady thinks they should be doing. I think he's right about college quarterbacks, but I think he's making a generalization about starting rookie quarterbacks that I don't know he's necessarily right about. It's a case-by-case basis. And the bigger factor is where you end up, what coach you have, what players you have around you, the stability in the organization. So if there is a quarterback that has started a fair amount of games at the collegiate level, like Bo Nix, like Caleb Williams, like Jaden Daniels, and they go to a decent situation with good coaching, stability, good supporting cast, they could be successful. Look at CJ Stroud last year. It can't happen, but Trevor Lawrence gets coached by Urban Meyer. So I don't think that Tom Brady's wrong. I just think he's making a generalization that just quarterbacks aren't ready. Just across the board. Young quarterbacks, because of what happens to them in college, they're not ready to go, and teams force them to play. And they don't coach them up, and they move on. And there's some truth to that. But I also think it's that the bigger reason why quarterbacks fail is where they end up. There could be quarterbacks that didn't get great coaching in college that go to good situations in the NFL and can start as rookies and do fine. But Tom Brady's becoming get off my lawn back in my day type guy. He gets pretty heated about the way things are versus the way they were when he was coming up. And the thing that's a little bit tricky is because of Tom Brady's greatness, his leaning towards whatever I did is best. Because I am the best, that means everything that I did is best and works and will work for everyone, right? He came out with the TB12 method, trying to indoctrinate people, right? The diet, the exercise, all the stuff that I do, it has led me to be the greatest quarterback of all time. It will work for you. And the problem is it doesn't. There's no surefire path to success, even Tom Brady's. If that was the case, then quarterbacks just shouldn't be taken in the first round. They should all be taken late. They should all be Tom Brady and Brock Purdy. Right? No pressure. Playing on really good teams, all this kind of stuff. And it's like, that's just not realistic. So I think he once in a while falls into this trap of it worked for me. So guess what? Works for everybody. Not true. A lot of different ways to go about it. But the biggest thing I agree with him is with college football. And I think that will continue to be a problem. Take your thoughts on it. 719-247-1313. Just getting going with this Tuesday edition of the show. Coming up next, Stephen A. Smith. Big week for him. Everybody's talking to Stephen A. Smith. He's got all these scoops. He shed some light based on his sources on why Deion Sanders acted the way he did towards that CBS reporter. And now finally we may know the whole story. That's next here on Extra Sports 1300. Celebrate Cyan Night with your Colorado Springs Switchbacks this Saturday, August 24th. Be at Widener Field starting at 6 as the first 2,000 fans will get a special edition Switchbacks clear bag provided by Widener Apartment Homes. Then after the Switchbacks take on I-25 rivals New Mexico United, stick around for an awesome fireworks display. Get your tickets now for this or any of the Switchbacks remaining matches in 2024 by logging on to switchbacksfc.com. You know, now that I was thinking about it during the break, maybe Brady is not making a gross generalization. Maybe he is not necessarily talking about a Caleb Williams or a Bo Nix or even a Jaden Daniels. Maybe he's talking about a Drake May. Because I agree with what he's saying about the way college football operates. And maybe when he's saying these rookie quarterbacks, he might be talking about the ones he just wasn't clear, and it came off like he was just talking about nobody should start as a rookie. That's how it hit my ear initially. Perhaps. I don't know this. I only have Tom Brady's old cell phone number when he was in New England. When he moved to Tampa, he changed his number. It's a big whole thing. Nothing to do with me. Just lost touch. So I can't ask him to clarify. Perhaps he meant more specifically certain quarterbacks instead of just rookies in general. Maybe. But I do think he's onto something when it comes to the way that college football players operate. It's only going to get worse. So that was on Stephen A. Smith's show. And then Stephen A. Smith had another show the other day where perhaps we finally get the whole story when it comes to Deion Sanders shutting down that CBS 4 reporter. He says, and this is not from Deion Sanders himself, this is from sources that Stephen A. Smith has, that what happened at CBS is that there was a story that was done on him or the CU program, or there's some story done that Deion Sanders was involved with that was done by a black reporter. But when it came time to, once all the information was gathered and a lot of the groundwork was done, the story was handed off to a white reporter. Stephen A. Smith said his sources say that is what Deion Sanders was talking about when he shut down the reporter from CBS 4. And I could see that in his mind, that would be what he called foul to do something, for CBS to do something like that. And I'm not here to get into that whole dynamic. Right? But what I can say is if that is indeed what happened, then Deion Sanders' heart, I think, was in the right place. Because regardless of race or gender or status, if you in your line of work do the legwork, right? You put all the work in, all the hours in on a project, and then for someone above you or somebody adjacent to you in the pecking order at your work says, I'll take it from here, and sees it through to completion and then gets that credit, That's not right, is it? So we don't even have to get into race or gender or anything like that and just say that if that happened to you, you would be pretty salty about it. And if you saw that happen, you would probably not think that was okay. So if that is the case, because this is not Deion Sanders saying this is Stephen A. Smith saying this, and he didn't even get this information from Deion Sanders. But let's go with the premise that Stephen A. Smith's people are well connected and they know what's going on. That means Deion Sanders' heart was in the right place. I still think the execution was completely poor. Because the fact remains that reporter, and Stephen A. Smith tried to do this, right? He looked at him in the eye and he said, it's not about you. He didn't embarrass him. Like, he did all that. It was embarrassing. It was awkward. It did not come off well. And I hate to sound like Jay Norvell here, but he's saying it to him. He says, I'm looking at you in the eye when he's wearing sunglasses. And it's like, okay. But the point here is local CBS affiliate has little to nothing to do with big CBS. So to me, if you're going to shut down the reporter and you think you're in the right, okay, and you want to send a message to CBS, then to me, you should explain why. Instead of what? You expect the reporter to go to corporate CBS and say, hey, I just got shut down by Deion Sanders. Can you explain to me? He says you know what you did. Care to explain it to me? When's the last time you reached out to a higher up if you're in a corporate structure? When's the last time you demanded answers from your corporate headquarters and got them? Right? So, and Deion Sanders has been in the media, not local media, but he has to understand, like, that's not going to have it. That reporter's not going to call up corporate HQ and say, hey, what did you do? It doesn't work like that. So if you're going to say, I'm not going to talk to CBS and I'm going to deny you content, because, by the way, he's doing essentially to this reporter what he believes CBS did to this other reporter that was doing the story on Deion Sanders. Okay, so tit for tat, we can debate whether that's the best way to go about it. Right? He's not rising above the situation. He's doing exactly to them what they're doing to this other person. Eye for an eye. Again, is that the best way to operate? But setting that aside, to take it out on somebody who has nothing to do with it without an explanation will lead people to the conclusions that they jump to and the takes that they had about it. Like, that's on Deion Sanders. What else are we supposed to do? Nobody knows what it is. Some people thought it was Big 12 coach rankings. Some people, I thought maybe it had something to do with their coverage of Shiloh's bankruptcy case. Stephen A. Smith didn't even know why he did it. He thought it had something to do with, back in the day, Deion Sanders wanting to be paid as much by CBS as Dan Marino. Like, nobody knew what the reason was. So how effective is what you're doing if nobody understands what you're doing? And then on top of that, you add in the whole interaction he had with Sean Keeler. His heart can be in the right place. And look, I'm not my initial reaction was like, oh, Deion Sanders is a bad guy. I still think Deion Sanders is a good guy. Absolutely. It's not anything on his character. I just thought that I was seeing a guy who has become so insulated and surrounded by yes men and sycophants and fanboys that he feels like if anybody crosses him, he doesn't have to respond. He doesn't have to answer anybody. And I think that could be troubling. You know, that's not a trend you want to follow. You don't want to be that person that only addresses people that say nice things about you. But that didn't mean that Deion Sanders is a bad guy. So if what Stephen A. Smith is reporting is the truth, then I can appreciate Deion Sanders in where his intent was, but the execution of it and the whole look was still bad. Even with this new information, it's still a bad look. Still think you're going after the wrong person. You have a massive platform. Like, take it to big CBS. Don't do that to somebody on a local level. Right? Because then you're essentially doing the same thing that you think is so wrong that CBS did. So now at least we get the whole story here. Still not really moved in a major direction to say that Deion Sanders handled all of that the way he should have. Still don't think that's the case. 719-247-1313. Take your thoughts on it. Speaking of the Sanders family, the AP All-American list came out, and some people were wondering where's Shador. And I'll tell you where Shador is. It's right where he belongs. That's next here on Extra Sports 1300. Welcome in Drive Time Sports on this Tuesday. A reminder, you can watch the show live on our social media platforms, whether you follow us on Facebook, X, Instagram, or YouTube, or all of them, or some combination of them. Stream the show on each one of those platforms every day, with very few exceptions. At XTRA Sports 1300. We are still waiting on Sean Payton to do the thing that we all know he's going to do. And at this point, I feel like he's just being difficult about it. I mean, seriously, like I know yesterday I said he's going to do it the right way, right? And the wrong way would have been to just announce Bo Nix as the starter after Sunday's game against Green Bay. But I also wouldn't put it past Sean Payton to just like wait until he stops getting asked about it and then announce it. Like the next press conference he has, if nobody asks, and it won't be his next one because they're going to ask him. But like, could you see like Friday, nobody asks him about it because they're like, we tried Wednesday, we tried Thursday, he's not answering us, whatever. We'll ask about other things. Is Bo Nix going to play? Zach Wilson, all that kind of stuff. And then if he gets through an entire press conference with no questions about who he's going to name the starter, as he's walking off the podium, he goes, oh, and Bo Nix is starting it against Seattle, and walks away. Would you put it past him? I wouldn't put it past him. But for now, I think he's still in the window of, hey, I got to meet with these guys, sit down with them, break the news to them, being deliberate about it. And that's fine. I'm just saying, Sean Payton has a side of him where he might be difficult just to be difficult. Meanwhile, in Washington, they are not playing any games. They have named Jaden Daniels the starter. And when I heard Dan Quinn's reasoning behind it, I went, doesn't that kind of sound like the situation in Denver? Take a listen.
We knew we would get here, but we were just excited to see how we would. And so seeing him hit all the spots, this is a rare competitor. And those are the things that I knew about him, but seeing it in your own building, on your own team, around new teammates, that was cool to see.
I really like that from Dan Quinn, like acknowledging, look, we thought we were going to make Jaden Daniels our week one starter. It was our plan to have him be the week one starter. But we did want to see it play out. And that's what Sean Payton's done. Everything you have heard from Sean Payton about Bo Nix, how could you even entertain the possibility that this was actually an open competition for the starting quarterback job? It never was. But Sean Payton still, because there's no reason necessarily, what would be the point of naming him the starter week one? You acquired Zach Wilson. You paid above market value for Jared Stidham last year to bring him in. Like, there's no advantage in doing it. With Chicago, it just would have been laughable for them to be like, well, hold on. May not be Caleb. That would have been stupid. But in Denver, okay, you let it play out, let it see it happen, and that's what makes it, I think, more satisfying in the end, doesn't it? If you're a Broncos fan, isn't more satisfying, even though you knew that all of this was, a smoke screen, it was a charade, he was going to be the starter week one. Isn't it more satisfying to hold on a little bit to the illusion that maybe he wasn't going to be named the starter and then see him perform these 2 weeks and now know he's going to be? I think it is. Pro Football Focus has come out with their grades from preseason week 2, and Bo Nix was their highest rated rookie quarterback. For these 2 preseason weeks, Bo Nix is rated in the top 5 in terms of first round picks. But both J.J. McCarthy and Jaden Daniels are rated higher than him. So, and even though Caleb Williams isn't on Pro Football Focus's top whatever list, people in Chicago are going crazy. They love Caleb Williams. They are totally bought in. And they're talking big in Chicago. But you know what? That's everywhere. Take what is being said here about Bo Nix, and it's happening to some degree in Chicago. It was happening in Minnesota until McCarthy got hurt or was ruled out for the season. It's happening in D.C. It's happening even in New England. The only place where it's not happening is Atlanta, and that's just because of the weird situation that whole thing is. But even Raheem Morris is like, we know how good Michael Penix is. He doesn't even need to play, which is bizarre. Like, I understand this week Bo Nix doesn't need to play or Caleb doesn't need to play. Feel like Michael Penix, these are the only reps he's supposed to get all year. Like, shouldn't he play in the preseason? That whole Atlanta thing. Like, I still think they have a great chance of winning their division, but it is weird, the situation there. So everybody loves their rookie quarterback. Everybody. And we know that eventually not everybody is going to end up loving their quarterback. Not every single one of these guys is going to hit. I promise you, at least one of them is going to fail. For whatever reason. Could even be injuries. Injuries, coaching, not progressing, whatever the case may be. One of these guys, they're not all going to hit. And that's been a universal truth of about every quarterback draft class in the history of the NFL draft. Not every one of these guys is going to hit. But there are enough of them to where one or two of them may not work out, but that still leaves 2 or 3 that do. So with the vibes as high as they are right now in New England, in Washington, in Chicago, in Denver, I'll ask the question. Ceiling. Is it 1983? Those conversations existed leading up to the draft. And now you have a couple of preseason games from all these guys. You know where they are now. Who's going to be coaching them, who they're throwing the ball to, whether they're starting or not, except for Bo Nix. We still obviously don't know that one. '83? Are we there? I can't get there. I'm not. Marino, Elway, Kelly. That's almost 10 Super Bowls. Not wins, obviously, but appearances. We're in an NFL that basically the Patriot dynasty has handed the baton to the Chiefs dynasty. That is one conference that has essentially been spoken for 30 years. So the idea that this class is going to go to that many Super Bowls, and I know there aren't a lot of Super Bowl wins, just the two. I think that's a more attainable number by this quarterback class. But I just, and you're talking, and Kelly's very talented, but like Marino and Elway are on another level when it comes to their talent. I don't know if all these guys, because I'll tell you right now, Bo Nix is not one of those talents. Caleb maybe, Jaden Daniels maybe, Drake may, but Bo Nix isn't. So I can't, the accomplishment of that 83 class, the talent that was in that 83 class, what it proved to be, how prolific those three guys were. I don't think that this class has three guys that are going to have a resume like Elway, Marino, Kelly. I can't set the bar there. That's too much. But there are two more modern quarterback draft classes that I think really the conversation could be with. 2004. Eli Manning, Ben Roethlisberger, Phillip Rivers. And then you have another class of the Aaron Rodgers, Alex Smith class. Those are two modern classes that I think are held in pretty high regard given what their quarterbacks have experienced. You go back to 2018, Josh Rosen's essentially out of the league, I think. Josh Allen's great. Baker Mayfield's carved out a decent NFL career. I don't think that class, which is probably the last class we had this conversation about, is on the same level as either of the ones I just mentioned. Could this class be above those two? Because arguably after those two, it's 1983. So the Rodgers-Smith class, which I would say is not as good as the 04 class with Eli, Ben, and Phil. I call him Phil. You have one surefire first ballot Hall of Famer in Aaron Rodgers, right? One of the best quarterbacks of his generation, Super Bowl champion. And you have another quarterback in Alex Smith who won a ton of games, was a very good quarterback for a long period of time, but not generational, not an all-time great. I think this class absolutely has that chance. Caleb Williams could be Aaron Rodgers. Right? And MVPs, a Super Bowl, deep playoff runs. Caleb Williams could be Aaron Rodgers. Maybe could Aaron Rodgers be Caleb Williams' ceiling? And then you go to Bo Nix. I think his ceiling is Alex Smith. I've said that. To me, the ceiling for Bo Nix is Alex Smith. the floor for Bo Nix is Kenny Pickett. Right? Because Kenny Pickett was supposed to be as pro-ready a quarterback as you could possibly have. He's ready to go day one, no doubt about it. And you saw things, but then you realize that was it. There wasn't a next gear. And you could argue that Kenny Pickett even regressed from one year to the next in Pittsburgh. So I think Alex Smith is the ceiling. I was going to say Michael Penix. Kenny Pickett would be Bo Nix's floor. But let's say he is. Let's say both of these players, Caleb Williams and Bo Nix, just take those two. They both hit their ceilings. Caleb Williams is Aaron Rodgers, essentially, and Bo Nix is Alex Smith. You still have Jaden Daniels, who I think is better than Bo Nix. You have Drake May, J.J. McCarthy, and Michael Penix. Just law of averages says one of those other guys could carve out a better career than some of the other quarterbacks in that class, which was Matt Castle, Ryan Fitzpatrick, Jason Campbell, Kyle Orton, remember him, and Derek Anderson. Right? So there were a lot of guys that at one point or another were starting quarterbacks in the league. None of them really looked at seriously as franchise quarterbacks. So if you get one of these guys, Daniels, May, McCarthy, or Penix, to be better than Matt Castle, Ryan Fitzpatrick, Jason Campbell, et cetera, then this class would be better than that one. Now, the tricky thing is going to be that 04 class. Eli, Ben, and Phillip Rivers. Take a break, come back. Do you think that this draft class has the potential to be as good as that one? That's next here on Extra Sports 1300. How good will this rookie quarterback class be? Early returns are this will be the greatest quarterback class in the history of quarterback classes. Everybody's loving what they have. And they should. Here's kind of a not as much talked about aspect of this. We know preseason, you don't get a lot of exotic looks. You don't get a lot of the first stringers, right? And we talked about that with Bo Nix, trying to put into context what he's done the last 2 games. It can still be impressive given some of those realities of what he's going up against. It absolutely can be. And the same can be said for Caleb Williams and Jaden Daniels and Drake May. But there's kind of another half to that. You know, all of these teams and coaches have incentives to make sure that these guys hit for a variety of reasons, right? For Chicago, it's their history, right? It's the history of not being able to find a quarterback, and they finally think that they do. They traded somebody in Justin Fields that you may have your qualms with, you may not think is that guy, but I'm telling you, people in Chicago liked him. Okay, you gave up on him to get Caleb. You loaded up on weapons around Caleb Williams. Matt Eberflus's job is at stake more than any of these other coaches, right? Gerard Mayo's in year 1. Kevin O'Connell's safe. Sean Payton's not going anywhere. Dan Quinn just got to Washington. So you have a lot of incentive to make Caleb Williams work in Chicago. Matt Eberflus, franchise history, and the fact that you jettisoned Justin Fields in order to get Caleb Williams. In Denver, you know the circumstances, right? The last better part of a decade. Sean Payton, you know, acting like the cat that swallowed the canary when it comes to Bo Nix. He thinks he got one over on everyone because he has Bo Nix. And now he has to prove that he did. Washington with the new ownership group and everything like that. So all of these places, New England trying to get back to where they are, they all have, and this is no different than any other year, right? When you draft a quarterback in the first round, if you don't make it work, people get fired. Fan bases turn on you. Like, there are repercussions to whiffing on a first round quarterback. And I say all that to say, you don't think that while defenses are very vanilla, that they're not scheming the hell out of the offense when these rookie quarterbacks are on the field? There's no agreement that these two teams go into, any two teams go into a preseason game, that, hey, I'm not going to show you anything. And the other one has to agree to that. Each team makes their own decision. Matt LaFleur doesn't even need to play Jordan Love, let alone play him and scheme up some things to make Jordan Love look good. Right? And there are quarterbacks throughout the league. Andy Reid's not doing a bunch of scheming for Patrick Mahomes in the preseason. That's why you got the behind-the-back pass. That was just Patrick Mahomes riffing. That wasn't a design play. But I bet you everything that it will be moving forward. Sean Payton, Cliff Kingsbury, and the offensive coordinators in Chicago The guy, I want to say Steichen. It's not Steichen. It's the guy they got from Seattle. All of these play callers, all of these coaching staffs, they're putting in more effort with the offensive game plan than they are in Green Bay or Kansas City or Baltimore or Buffalo or Miami. Right? Because it's about proving it. It's about giving these rookie quarterbacks confidence. It's about getting the fan base all excited. So that's another aspect here. And it's not to take away from any of these people. It's just to put in proper context what you're seeing. You don't think Sean Payton went into his bag a little bit with Bo Nix? You don't think he spent a little extra time scripting out the plays for him? You don't think they did that in Chicago? You don't think they did that in Washington? They absolutely did. So you have a starting caliber, what they think is a starting caliber quarterback going up against a not starting caliber defense that is base defense, that is vanilla looks, against a first-string quarterback with first-string weapons that's being schemed up at a first-string level, like it's game one of the regular season. That's, I think, part of the reason why all of these quarterbacks have looked so good. Now, the credit you give them is to say, hey, teams have done this for quarterbacks for years, right? You don't think Carolina tried to make Bryce Young look good in his preseason debut? I'm sure this has happened for years. But where the credit comes in, where the excitement comes in, is, oh, they actually showed it. But getting back to the conversation about what this quarterback class could be. I already said they're not 83. They're not going to be 83. And if I'm proven wrong, then fine. I will eat my own hat. But I'm not going to put that on them. That's an insane standard. That's just shy of us proclaiming Jerry Stackhouse, Harold Miner, the next Michael Jordan, right? You don't do that. Okay. So the idea, and I happen to believe that this class is not going to turn into the 1983 class. Let's not forget that the Denver Broncos were a better situation for John Elway than the team that originally drafted him. Right? So let's see what these situations turn into. Because while it does look like every one of these teams, every one of them except Atlanta, although if Michael Penix were ever able to take over that offense, it looks like he has plenty of weapons to operate. But Atlanta's the only one that doesn't seem to be doing what's best for that quarterback by sitting him behind Kirk Cousins for the foreseeable future. But New England, Washington, Chicago, absolutely Chicago, Denver, they all seem to be heading in the right direction as franchises. Minnesota as well. Either they're already going the right direction, or they're starting to. So there's optimism. But they all, in their own way, have a ways to go. And they all have some amount of history, either recent or for a very long time, that says they're not good at this. Right? I'm just talking about the organizations. New England may say, "Well, come on." Well, Mac Jones, like the last guy you had. So I get Brady. I understand that. It's like the Broncos. They had Elway. They had Peyton. Yeah, but what has the last few years have been? Chicago, it's been forever. Minnesota, they have history. All of these organizations have history. With Washington, they put up a graphic on ESPN. They're like onto their 12th different opening day starter in 12 years. So there should be a healthy amount of skepticism surrounding all of these situations. And it's why I can't reasonably sit here and say this is going to be like the 83 class. I gotta see some things. But I think absolutely this class could be better than the class of Aaron Rodgers and Alex Smith. Because not only are there enough quarterbacks to make it so we don't just look back and see two that are notable, but these quarterbacks are also more talented. Right? I liked Alex Smith coming out of Utah, but Jaden Daniels is more talented than Alex Smith was. Caleb Williams is more talented than Alex Smith was. Drake May is more talented than Alex Smith coming out of Utah. So they have talent and there are enough guys to potentially put it over that draft class. The one I'm really settling in on is that 04 class with Eli Manning, Phillip Rivers, and Ben Roethlisberger. All three of those quarterbacks had careers of note. All three of them were longtime starters, longtime franchise quarterbacks. Two of them, whether you like it or not, are going to end up in the Hall of Fame. Ben Roethlisberger and Eli Manning are going to be Hall of Famers. And there will be plenty of people saying Phillip Rivers should be in the Hall of Fame with how prolific of a passer he was. So you have three franchise quarterbacks. Can this class get three? Because that is not common. One, most often. Two, sometimes. Three, almost never. And I think there's that potential. Because, again, I go back to talent. Eli Manning and Ben Roethlisberger, why their careers were as notable as they were because of how much they won. Phillip Rivers was because of the numbers he put up. Ben Roethlisberger was kind of in the middle. Eli was only about winning. Right? That's all we equate Eli with. And it's not even winning all the time. It's only in the Super Bowl and only in two Super Bowls. This class has the ability to be better than that one. And you could pick, as long as your list starts with Caleb, any other combination I could see, as long as you're including Caleb Williams in the mix. Could they get three long-time franchise-type quarterbacks? Caleb, Jaden, Drake? Caleb, Jaden, Bo? Caleb, Bo, J.J. McCarthy? I would definitely not have that combination. But you've thought high enough about this quarterback class. And now you've seen some things. And you also look at, yes, all of these teams have a dark past when it comes to the inability to get the quarterback position right. But Ryan Poles is doing everything that he possibly can to make Caleb Williams successful. We haven't seen a rookie quarterback with the supporting cast that Caleb Williams does. We've never seen this. CJ Stroud didn't have the talent that Caleb Williams has around him. Washington, Denver, both. Better ownership, more stable ownership, deep-pocketed ownership that wants to make an impact on their organization and is willing to spare no expense to do it. I like the direction the Broncos are going. I like, even though it's very early, I like what Washington could become. So there's enough there to make me say this could end up rivaling 04. Now it's just a matter of who are the three and is there potentially a fourth? And Eli isn't, didn't have a great career. So the 04 class is not even close to the 83 class. I think that's where I would set the ceiling. 3 guys that are in the Hall of Fame conversation. That's the ceiling for this quarterback class. What say you? 719-247-1313. Keep that number handy because coming up next, I'll be giving you a chance to win passes to the Colorado State Fair and passes to the Carnival at the Colorado State Fair. That's coming up in just a little bit. But in the meantime, I want to tell you, if you're often feeling tired, lacking motivation and drive, maybe you've gained some weight, notice The Colorado State Fair and Rodeo begins this Friday down in Pueblo, and it's a good thing it runs August 23rd through September 2nd, because I don't know if, and I've tried, trust me, I don't know if you could do everything in one day. Even if you plan out to go all day and then to your favorite concert that night, they're still with their concert lineup. Goo Goo Dolls, Ludacris, Trace Atkins, Commodores and Spinners. Right there, if you like two of the concerts, that's 2 days already that you got to go to the Colorado State Fair. And with all the stuff at the carnival and all the food and the exhibits and everything, I don't know if it's a one-day thing. So it's a good thing it runs August 23rd through September 2nd. And I am here to start you off on the right foot. I know you want to go. How about I take care of your admission? Not just to get into the fair, but how about also to the carnival? I have 2 state fair passes, 2 gate admissions, and 2 carnival passes. For the 13th texter to text fair and their name, first and last, if I can impose that upon you, to 719-247-1313. Again, the 13th texter, fair and your name, to 719-247-1313. Did you see every day? I think NIL can't get nuttier. Like, we have reached peak nuttiness, and every day I am proven so wrong. Did you see what Oklahoma State is going to do? Oklahoma State is going to slap a QR code on the helmets of all of their football players. So you can scan the QR code and donate to the collective. And each player would have their individualized, so you know that you're saying, hey, the collective, I want you to give this money to this guy. Essentially, is like every eating establishment that I go into. It's not enough that I am laying down my hard-earned money to eat at an establishment. I am also asked to tip. And I'm not talking about a restaurant where you're waited on. I'm talking about a go to the counter, right? All these places now. Tip comes up all the time. That's essentially what Oklahoma State is instituting. You're paying money to go and watch these guys. You're supporting them by paying your ticket. Not to mention beer, peanuts, hot dogs, and whatever else you may purchase while you're at the game. Now you could go a step further and choose to tip them for what they do on the football field. That's what they're doing. And this comes just a few days after Arkansas is trying to create essentially a 50-50 raffle, which you see at a lot of sporting events. The Rockies have done this for a long time. I think the Nuggets and the Avalanche do this. I think Air Force has even dabbled in this, if I'm not mistaken. But normally a 50-50 raffle would be 50% goes to the winner and 50% goes to a charitable organization. Arkansas is trying to set it up where 50% would go to the winner, but 50% would go to their collective, which is not a charitable organization as much as they may make it out to be. So they're trying, and I don't want to get too into this, but they're trying to get a casino to kind of house it. I don't know all the rules that are necessary, but like you need certain licenses to put on this kind of, raffle lottery. There are licenses for this. Well, obviously the casino has a license to do these things, but that's kind of not ideal when it comes to the world of athletics to have, especially collegiate athletics, to have a casino so closely tied to a college football program. So these teams, they're getting imaginative. Would you do that if you went to I know Air Force is not in this conversation, but CSU. Hey, that was a great touchdown throw. Let me click the QR code. First of all, do cameras reach that far sometimes? Like, what if you're sitting way at the top of the stadium? You're not going to be able to do the QR code. Maybe they'll flash it on the scoreboard. I bet that's what they do. Touchdown, Ollie Gordon. Here's the QR code. Man, every day I think we're at the peak when it comes to NIL, and every day it's like I'm halfway. We're halfway up. We're halfway up. We're not even close. Tipping, that's essentially what it is. Hey, that was a good block. 15% tip. Hey, if the NCAA just would have embraced this and not this form of NIL, but just not held on so tightly to this amateurism stuff, and they would have gotten ahead of it and they would have been progressive, then some of this stuff would not happen. And look, a QR code is hardly the most ridiculous thing in the grand scheme of things, but it's another thing. It's a new way, right? If the NCAA would have been progressive and gotten out in front of this, then maybe we would not get these silly different ways for a collective to raise money. And maybe we would have a cap. And maybe football would be a work study or a job instead of NIL, pay for play. And now tipping for playing. From the 719, they should put the roster with the QR codes above the urinal for an easy scan. There you go. I mean, sometimes I feel like that's how intrusive the tipping is. There are enough places now where I'm like, okay, I'm expecting it. And I'm not stingy when it comes to that. Like I do the tipping 99 out of 100 times. I tip, I get it, but there are some places where I go, I'm like, you're asking? I mean, putting them in above the urinal would not be the most intrusive ask. Tip? And then the same texter adds, you'll never see a more still group of players than you will see at OSU. More still group of players. I'm sorry. I can't read apparently. You will never see a more still group of players than you will see at OSU in hopes of getting scanned. No touchdown celebrations. Ollie Gordon runs in for 6 and then just stands there. Guys trying to mob him and he pushes them away. Stop it. Don't block my QR code. From the 303, your money is not hard earned. You did get to talk about sports for a living because you are that cool. I don't know if either. I think you're probably right on the first part. I don't think you're right on the second part. I am not that cool. Just ask my kids. Far from it. But that's sweet of you to say. 719-247-1313. We need to start pulling Hello there. Welcome in Drive Time Sports on a Tuesday. And what a fine Tuesday it is. Thank you for listening, whether it's on your radio, online at extrasports1300.com, through the new Extra Sports 1300 app, sponsored by Diversus Health, mental health and well-being for all, or if you're watching and listening. Because certainly there would be no need to just watch the show without the sound. On our social media platforms at XTRA Sports 1300. A lot of great ideas coming in. Oklahoma State going to put QR codes on their football players so you can scan it and transfer some of your money, basically tip them, and it would all be under the umbrella of NIL. They should have a Shark Tank type show for just NIL ideas. And the Sharks could be Deion Sanders, could be Kirby Smart, although I'm sure Kirby Smart has no issue yet. But you got to get one. Well, Deion would be DeMarc Cuban of it. Lane Kiffin. And then somebody would come in and have an idea for a way to raise NIL money. And then I would go on to that show and I would say, hey, I have an idea. Appear in a commercial for a small business around town. And they would say, get out of here. That is the worst idea ever. Even though that's what NIL is supposed to be. Gotta get more creative than that. From somebody texted in and said that I need to print a QR code on my shirt and wear it around so people can scan it and tip me. And I say to that, although that is a great idea in theory, when I'm doing that, I would actually be out the cost of the shirt and I would never recoup my money. I'm more worried about their ability to take money away from me through a QR code. I don't quite understand how QR codes work. Can they pull money for? I don't know for sure. That's why I don't dabble in QR codes. And I am afraid of change. But I promise you but you actually bring up a great idea. You don't think Ollie Gordon at Oklahoma State or Shador or Shiloh at CU are going to walk around with their own QR code on their shirt to raise some NIL bucks? That's the next step in the evolution, right? So Oklahoma State has the QR code idea. Next, you're going to get Central Florida instead, it's not going to be Nike or Adidas or Under Armour. It's just on all of their gear. It's going to be a QR code. It's going to be the Golden Knights logo on one breast, and on the other breast of their shirt or their jacket or whatever it might be, it's going to be their own personalized QR code. I sound like Tom Brady, don't I? The world isn't as good as it was when I was whatever. Speaking of Brady, he's one of the three stories that are driving the show. The former Patriot and Buccaneer quarterback, either the voice of reason in a mad world, or a much better looking get off my lawn guy. Judge for yourself.
There used to be college programs. Now there are college teams. You're no longer learning a program, you're learning a playbook. And the program is ultimately, like at Michigan, for me, that was a pro-style program. 5 years, I got to learn how to drop back pass, to read defenses, to read coverages, to be coached. I had to learn from being 7th quarterback on the depth chart to moving up to 3rd to ultimately being a starter. I had to learn all those things in college.
That was Tom Brady. He would go on. He was talking to Stephen A. Smith at that Fanatics thing that was going on in New York. And that part of it, I agree with Tom Brady. And it's only going to get worse. We were just talking about the QR codes to raise money for the collective. Like, what Tom Brady is saying right there is only going to become more true as time goes on. Because all of these quarterbacks, if any of these quarterbacks are, now some don't have the opportunity to bounce from place to place, but the ones that do, they want to go and either get paid or play, and usually those two things are tied together. So who has the ability to learn a new playbook or to work their way up? I think Tom Brady is right about that. And maybe the workforce that is coming into the NFL is not as good in terms of football IQ as previous. Like, the talent can be better or the same. But I think Tom Brady's right about that. But then he went on and talked about what a travesty is, or how ridiculous it is that these rookies are forced to play. And I think if he's talking about the quarterbacks he was referring to in the clip you just heard, I'm with him. Right? Because we've seen these flash in the pan. Zach Wilson was a great example. Right? Easy example to make. One throw at a combine, and this dude was the second coming. Forget what he did at BYU, how few games he started. He made that one throw, and the Jets are like, not only is he our franchise quarterback, he's our week 1 rookie year starter. And we've seen that throughout the league. It's not just a Jets thing. So, yeah, you're getting a quarterback that does not have the wealth of knowledge that other draftees have had in the past, and it's part of the reason why they don't succeed. But I would still contend that the bigger indicator of success is the environment you walk into. Right? Because I looked at some of the quarterbacks that started year 2, became a full-time starter year 2, that has been pointed out. Look at how good all these guys are. Right? Tom Brady, Patrick Mahomes, Aaron Rodgers, Phillip Rivers, Tony Romo. They're not all in the same breath, but they're all guys who did not start as rookies. But think about the situations they found themselves in. So is it because they waited? Do you think Patrick Mahomes would not be even close to the player he is today if he got to start week 1 in his rookie year? I don't know that I can go that far. I just think you have a combination of what Brady is talking about, but they tend to be drafted by these desperate teams that aren't doing their homework, and they thrust them into duty. There are quarterbacks that have waited to their second year to start and have been massive failures. I think a bigger indicator is, who are you being coached by? Do you have an offensive line? Do you have weapons? Are you in a stable organization? So I can get on board with what Brady is saying about college football these days. I would agree with him. But I do think he's falling into a bit of a trap of, this is all what I did, so therefore it's gospel. And it's like, no, it's anecdotal like it is for everybody else. You ended up in a really good spot. There are quarterbacks that have not paid the dues that Tom Brady did that have been successful in the NFL. A lot of it depends on where they land. And that's on the organization. Speaking of where Brady came from, here's story number 2.
That hit me in a way that I wouldn't say it was positive for me, but at the same time, I've got to use that and say, hey, how can I grow from that? How can I be better? And that's really where I'm at from that standpoint. Do I feel like that's me? No, but how can I grow from that situation and create a world where that's not the case that anyone says that about Brian Flores?
Tagged it on the end there. That was Brian Flores responding to Tua Tagovailoa's comments, basically calling him a terrible person and saying that all he did when Tua was in Miami was tear him down and tell him how much he sucked. And there's a bit of recognition from Brian Flores, I think, that he knows that he didn't go about it the best way. And it's not because he was necessarily a terrible person. I think the big failure of Brian Flores was to understand how to get the best out of Tua. Instead, he did what he was comfortable with. And he's comfortable because he comes from a certain coaching tree that it is being a taskmaster and constantly challenging and, yeah, maybe insulting and tearing down a little bit. Tua didn't respond to that. A lot of athletes don't respond to that. And I think you're hearing Brian Flores understand that, yeah, I probably didn't handle that the best way possible because I did not find the way that was best for Tua. And that's ultimately your job as a coach. You could talk about guys fitting into your system or being what you look for. But the fact of the matter is, it's much more important to be able to be flexible as a coach to understand how each player responds to different sorts of motivation. And that never got through Brian Flores' head. And it's why he got fired in Miami. They chose Tua over him. And guess what? They chose correctly. But Brian Flores isn't the only one. Right? A branch off of this tree a little bit is, of course, he's a Belichick disciple. Right? Brian Flores tearing down his quarterback. There was a guy that was in Denver a few years ago that basically, before ghosting was even cool, he ghosted his quarterback. Right? It's been a staple of these Belichick disciples. They take what Belichick does, that, by the way, he paid dearly for in Cleveland, but they take what Belichick does, and that's the only way they know how to coach, and they go to these new places without the resume of Bill Belichick, And they ride these players and they criticize them and they all fail. Bill O'Brien, Joe Judge, Brian Flores, Josh McDaniels. Josh McDaniels in 2 places. And I think that's some of the understanding from Brian Flores. It's like, yeah, I went into Miami like I was Bill Belichick and conducted myself as such, and it didn't work. And if I ever want a chance at another head coaching job, maybe I need to develop a change up, so to speak. Be a little bit more carrot than stick. But interestingly enough, you see that Belichick's players aren't that way. You ever notice that? Like, people will hold up Mike Vrabel, and this is just an aside, like, struck me today. Like, people point at Vrabel, and it's like, Vrabel isn't really a Belichick disciple like Brian Flores or Josh McDaniels. I mean, he learned some things. But you notice the guys that play for Belichick have a much better balance than their coaches. When it's the coaches, they're all just like Bill Belichick. But look at Belichick's former players. Tom Brady, Mike Vrabel, Rob Gronkowski, Julian Edelman. Like, they're all great personalities. They're all fun-loving. People love to be around all of them. Unlike the guys that coached under Bill Belichick. But yet they took some of the Belichick with them, right? In terms of discipline, work ethic, football IQ. Like, they all took that stuff. And Mike Vrabel was a successful head coach. It's like he's not the same as McDaniels and Brian Flores. Interesting. The players don't turn out like Bill Belichick, or they have just enough of Bill Belichick without the part of Bill Belichick that you don't love. But yeah, Brian Flores, understanding that probably not the best way in retrospect to make it work with Tua, and to see what Mike McDaniel's done with Tua, it's got to further drive home that point. Let's go get some Broncos stuff in here. Here's story number 3.
This freaking Zach Wilson now, the last
amazing.
week and a half.
That's great.
I grabbed him and I said, look, I just want you to focus on having fun and playing. My job is to make you millions either with us or for another team.
Wow.
His last 2 weeks have been outstanding.
Yeah.
This freaking Zach Wilson. Somebody, there's a t-shirt idea. Sean Payton on the Scoop City pod with his former quarterback Chase Daniel and Diana Rossini of The Athletic. Continuing the pitch. That's why I laugh. Not because he said this freaking Zach Wilson, but because it was a part of this hard sell he's making across the league. Here's what Sean Payton is doing. He doesn't want to carry 2 quarterbacks if he can help it, right? He understands there are other positions where he needs more bodies at than quarterback. He's got Bo Nix. He just needs a backup. Okay, but he wants to get rid of one of them. The one he wants to get rid of is Zach Wilson, not because he hates the guy or anything, but it's like Bo has done what Bo has done, and Jared Stidham was brought in to be a backup quarterback. He's just the odd man out. But what Sean Payton is doing, and I would expect it to continue Sunday against Arizona, is just keep shopping this guy to the rest of the league. and trying to get off the hook for the $2.5 million that they would be on the hook for if they just outright cut him. I'm not saying he doesn't believe it to a degree, but he doesn't believe it as much as he comes across as he believes it. Or else he would make him the backup. But Sean Payton's going, look at what I did with Breeze. Look at what I did with Taysom Hill and Jameis Winston. Look at what I'm doing with Bo Nix. Don't you want this other guy that I am saying is awesome? Wouldn't you love to have one of Sean Payton's orphan dogs? It will only cost you a conditional 6th round pick. That's less than a cup of coffee a day to adopt Zach Wilson. Freaking Zach Wilson. Man, that dude is selling hard. But it's what Sean Payton does with the national media, right? And you juxtapose that with, and I know it's different subjects, but still, he's getting like combative with local reporters. Like, I have never seen a dichotomy within a coach the way I see with Sean Payton. The way he is with the national media, you want to hang out with him. The way he is with the local media, like, it is an obligation to speak to him. Freaking Zach Wilson. We'll see how much freaking Zach Wilson is showcased on Sunday in the Broncos preseason finale against the Arizona Cardinals. 719-247-1313. Take your thoughts on the 3 stories that are driving the show. More Drive Time Sports coming up next. The Colorado State Fair and Rodeo begins this week, August 23rd, runs through September 2nd. Free attractions and entertainment, plus carnival and a great concert lineup. Check it all out. Plan your visit, coloradostatefair.com. Congratulations to Kent, who won the pair of gate admission to the Colorado State Fair and a couple of carnival passes while he was at it, because that was the whole giveaway. I'll have more to give away tomorrow. Let's go to the text line. You guys are kind of being mean to me today. Got one text that says, I love when Tucker calls you soft. He didn't call me soft today. He's probably thinking it, but he didn't call me soft. And don't give him ideas, by the way. Tom says, here's your tip, Kaufman. Don't eat yellow snow. Well, too late. Where were you when I was 7? Huh, Tom? Where were you? You weren't there. This is fun. I mean, I go home and I crawl and get into the fetal position and cry. But like during the show, this is a fun, playful back and forth that we have going on here. Aaron Rodgers. Yes, that Aaron Rodgers says that Gents camp has been one of the most taxing of his career. Is that including or not including the week that you were in Egypt? Or did you have to go to Egypt because of how taxing this is? And also, do you understand that whatever level of taxing this camp has been on you is probably self-inflicted because of the things you say and do? Aaron Rodgers, the guy in the hot dog costume, and I think you should leave. We're all trying to figure out who did this. No, like, it's either why he went to Egypt because it was so taxing, or I would like to know whether he includes the week in Egypt as a part of training camp because it was going on and it was mandatory that he be there, and he wasn't. Because to him, words don't matter. I wonder what he means by taxing now that I think about it. Because Aaron Rodgers says that words are just words. Like, you can make them mean anything you want. So maybe I need to read more into the article. Maybe he's talking about the IRS. Maybe that's taxing. Maybe he's accusing the IRS of targeting him. I don't know. I'm sorry. I brought this onto the airwaves and I didn't do my research. I don't know what Aaron Rodgers means by taxing. Because words could mean anything. He's exhausting. And I'm in Colorado. I'm not even on the Jets beat. Could you imagine talking about that guy every single day? I almost do it. And again, I'm not on the Jets beat. He knows what he's doing. That's okay. If you can get away with it, why not, right? Brett says you're going back to the conversation we were having earlier about how good this draft class could be. And if you're just joining us, maybe a good time to kind of reset it and get your thoughts on it. This rookie quarterback class, obviously everybody is just enamored with their rookie quarterbacks. Minnesota is in mourning for losing J.J. McCarthy because of what they saw in week 1 of the preseason. You know what's going on around here. People in Chicago are freaking out. They don't even know what they're seeing because they've never seen a quarterback with the level of talent that Caleb Williams possesses in their uniform at any point in their history. And they're like, is this what it's supposed to look like? Washington loves Jaden Daniels. New England loves Drake May. Atlanta's kind of a different story. I don't know what's going on in Atlanta. I know what's going on. He's so good, he doesn't even need to play. Like, why aren't we talking about Michael Penix being the best quarterback? His coach doesn't even think he needs to play in the preseason. That's how good Michael Penix is. This was a highly touted quarterback class going into it. Now you see all these guys in their new landing spots. You've recalibrated based on the coaching, based on the weapons. Now we know Caleb's going to start. We know Jaden Daniels is going to start, and we're eagerly awaiting Sean Payton to just say it. Just say it, Sean. Say he's the starter. '83 draft class good? I say no. I say that I can't get there that this class is going to be that. Could they be? I think their ceiling is 04. Ben, Big Ben, Eli, Phillip Rivers. Couple of players that will end up in Canton. One that put up big numbers. I could see best case scenario, this class being that. And that's one of the, 2 or 3 best draft classes ever. I can't go 83, but it's like Bo Nix. Bo Nix is a microcosm of the entire rookie class, right? You like what you see. You see the potential. You see the promise. And the path to them becoming whatever they're going to be in their career, you can see it. Right? And I think a lot of these situations that these quarterbacks are in, to one degree or another, you see them taking some steps. Chicago more than everybody else. But the Peyton Nix thing has worked. And now you just like surround him with weapons and keep coaching him up. And Washington, I think, can have a similar thing with Jaden Daniels. I think he's more talented than Bo Nix. I don't think he's getting the better coaching. But Cliff Kingsbury, his issue in Arizona was not that he couldn't make Kyler Murray a prolific quarterback. So you could see where these guys are and go, yeah, that has the potential of being pretty good. Brett says, you're saying Bo Nix isn't Jim Kelly. Correct. And Caleb Williams can be the next Aaron Rodgers. Correct. Alex Smith. I'm not sure Bo Nix hasn't forgotten more. That's tricky. Double negative. I'm not sure Bo Nix hasn't forgotten more about football than Alex Smith ever knew. Alex Smith's story and comeback is inspirational, but you can't make predictions like that. Tom Brady, did you predict him as the GOAT when he was drafted? Yes, I did. I was... How old was I when Tom Brady was drafted? That is so long ago. Tom Brady was drafted in so 2000. I was 15. Yep. So I was 15, and I recall the day vividly. After the draft, I went to school on Monday and I said, the guy that the Patriots just took out of Michigan is going to be the GOAT. Ask anyone I went to high school with. If you can find them. No, I didn't know that he was going to be the GOAT. But, like, this is kind of my gig. I predict things. I try to see where something is going in the future. And I know that that's a fool's errand. Like, look, we bet on sports. We make predictions. We make grand proclamations. Yeah, the probably miss more than I hit. The best sports gamblers in the world are like 54% in terms of winning 54% of their bets. Like, yeah, predicting the future is a little tricky. It's not foolproof, but it also is kind of part of the job description. I'm just telling you what I see and if I really think about the potential that some of these quarterbacks have based on what I've seen. Alex Smith was the number one quarterback in the draft. He's number one. I'm not so sure that Alex Smith doesn't know the same amount of football that Bo Nix does. I like this class. I do. And I think Bo Nix can work in Denver. I said his ceiling is Alex Smith. I'm talking about production. I'm talking about a career. That's his ceiling. Caleb Williams has a chance to be better than that. Much better than that. It's kind of all NFL teams are doing. It's kind of what Sean Payton's doing. It's what we all do. But the point is, I think this class has a pretty high ceiling. Not the highest of ceilings, but it's pretty high. If I told you that this class was going to be like that 04 class, Eli, Big Ben, and Phillip Rivers, a pretty dang good class. And I think the three right now, the three quarterbacks out of this draft, that if I'm betting on them, if there are going to be three guys with successful NFL careers to the degree of Ben Roethlisberger, Eli Manning, and Phillip Rivers, if I had three to bet on, it'd be Caleb, Jaden, and it would be Bo Nix at this point. But there's still time for everybody in this class. I think Drake May's more talented than Bo Nix. And I think if New England does this thing right, see Drew Bledsoe and Tom Brady and not Mac Jones and Cam Newton. I know that Cam Newton they didn't draft. But my point is, as long as they do the right things around their quarterback, Drake May could be the best quarterback in this class, not named Caleb Williams. It's just they have a long way to go to get there. All of them do. And that's why I said yesterday, like, forgive me if I'm not looking to put down my kid's college fund on the Denver Broncos to make the postseason. Like, I like what I see. I'm impressed by what I see. I think it's absolutely what you want to see if you're a Broncos fan, but that doesn't mean that they're going to be a playoff team this year. Long way to go, but I like this class. I do. I liked it going in. Some of my opinions have changed slightly. Others have not. 719-247-1313. Take some more of your texts coming up next. In the meantime, I want to tell you about QC Kinetics. Celebrate Cyan Night with your Colorado Springs Switchbacks on Saturday, August 24th. Be at Widener Field starting at 6 as the first 2,000 fans will get a special edition Switchbacks clear bag provided by Widener Apartment Homes. Then after the Switchbacks take on New Mexico United, experience an awesome fireworks display. Get your tickets for this or any one of the remaining 2024 season matches at switchbacksfc.com. Wasn't a win for the Switchbacks over the weekend, but given the late heroics by Delence Pierre with the header at the death off of a great pass from Speedy Williams, I was almost going to call it a set piece. It looked that pretty, but it was off of a throw-in. Headed into the back of the net. Switchbacks get a draw against Pittsburgh. Big result for them, and now 4 of their next 5 are at Widener Field. Chance to really make a move towards the top of the table. So we'll see you out there on Saturday, huh? Some news in the NHL in the last day or so that may be of interest to you if you're an Avalanche fan. Val Nichushkin. You know the situation. There has to be some kind of clarity between now and November when he is scheduled to be reinstated from the player assistance program. But a couple of things that have happened in the last 24 hours that could be potential pathways for the Avalanche if they do decide to move on from him. One has to do with the former Avs player, and that's Ryan Johansson. The Philadelphia Flyers have essentially cut him. And Johansson and his agent are saying, you can't do that. And the NHLPA is saying, we're going to look at this thing. The Flyers just released him, said, you're gone. And my guess is they're doing it. Well, I could tell you, it's not a guess. They're claiming breach of contract. So they're releasing him in their mind without any payment. No dead cap. No payments out. They're claiming breach of contract because it all has to do with, Ryan Johansson getting, I don't know if it was a second opinion or something about the way he has handled his injury. And they're like, breach of contract, you're out of here. And if Philadelphia is allowed to do this, then what's to stop the Avs from doing it? What's to stop anybody from doing this, right? Alleging a breach of contract. Like, yes, there has to be some sort of action that you can point to and say that's the breach of contract. Nichushkin has that. Right? He's got 2 back-to-back years of things that if the Avalanche wanted to go down that road, they could probably claim breach of contract. But here's where it gets complicated. Even for someone like me that says, I think it's better if Val Nichushkin does not rejoin the Colorado Avalanche, he's a much better player than Ryan Johansson. We got an up-close and personal look at that. So it's not, I don't think it's best that the Avs just cut him. That's a last-ditch desperation thing. But you have a player with some value. You want to get something out of that. Well, see Columbus. They trade Patrick Laine to the Montreal Canadiens, and you go, well, there it is. Patrick Laine was in the player assistance program, came out of it, got traded. There was a team that took Patrick Laine. Why can't the Avs do that? get something in return. Maybe not a player of similar ilk, but get a player that can help them, understanding that they're also dealing with a player that probably needs a change of scenery, like Patrick Laine. And I'm not trying to make their situations the same, other than they're both in the player assistance program and they both feel like maybe their current teams are done with them. I don't know the circumstances around either and why they're in the player assistance program. So you go, oh, there you go. Montreal took Patrick Laine. Why wouldn't a team take Valeri Nichushkin fresh off of the player assistance program? Here's where it gets tricky. Columbus also had to give up a second-round pick. So not only did Columbus get a lesser player back for Patrick Laine, they had to give up a decent asset. I guess second-round pick in the NHL is not like a second-round pick in the NFL, but it's not nothing. So they basically had to sweeten the deal on their side to get rid of Laine, and that's what you're going to see from the Avs. I'm not saying, I don't know if they're going to keep him or trade him, but what you're going to see is teams trying to be opportunistic and say, yeah, we're interested in the player, but we know you got to get rid of him. We know you can't walk back into the locker room. Well, we'll take him, but we're not giving you a player on the same level, and you got to give us something else. Is that what the Colorado Avalanche are willing to do? In their mind, is Valeri Nichushkin not welcome back in that dressing room to the point that they would be willing to couple him with a draft pick to get back a lesser player in the middle of a championship window? That's the thing. Philadelphia, Columbus, they're not in championship windows. This is much more complicated for the Colorado Avalanche. But two things that have happened over the last 24 hours in the NHL where you go, similar, but not the same situation. But Gabriel Landeskog is making cuts on his skate, weaving. Video surfacing online about it the other day. So there's that. There's a balance. Before I let you go for the day, and I certainly appreciate